Hey everyone, how are you? This is Sam Berizzi, Loyola class of 2014. I was actually supposed to speak in your sports marketing class, but with everything going on with the pandemic, we had to make this virtual. Thank you guys for having me. I look forward to answering some of the questions that you guys put together. I'm going to start out today by giving you a little background on me, where I came from, why I'm in my position today, and what I do today, and then we'll kind of segue into some of those questions you guys had. So to start, as mentioned, my name is Sam Berizzi. I grew up in Darien, Connecticut, right outside of Fairfield County. I grew up swimming my entire life, competitive swimming in New Canaan, and I actually was recruited to swim at Loyola. So I was a distance swimmer at Loyola, Maryland from 2010 to 2014. And while I was there swimming, I also majored in communications with a specification in PR, and I also studied psychology. When I first got to Loyola, I did not know what I wanted to do, what type of industry I wanted to be in when I graduated. So I just started taking classes in marketing, PR, communications, and psychology. And the reason I did that is because I really like understanding the human brain, why someone buys the things they buy, why they're influenced by, a commercial, what are those purchasing decisions. So that's kind of the connectivity I had with the psychology and the communications background. So with that, I graduated, as mentioned, in 2014. Right when I graduated, I started working for a startup IT company. That company was Light Cloud, and I did that because I wanted to stay in Baltimore. I did not want to move back to Connecticut yet. I wanted to be able to really experience Baltimore. I just didn't really with the swimming career in college. So I ended up moving to Federal Hill. I started working for this IT company. So I did everything from social media marketing to slow cycle sales to business development. And while I was in that role, I had my hands in a lot of different buckets. I learned a lot of different things. But while I was there, I realized that IT wasn't for me. And I also knew in the back of my head that if I don't try out in New York City and work for a big ad agency, I would always wonder what that was like. So I ended up leaving Baltimore, leaving Federal Hill, and I went right to New York City. I was commuting from home, but also lived in New York for 2 times a week. So it was kind of an interesting life. But I started working for an ad agency called Mindshare. So I was a strategic media planner for Unilever. So I worked on beauty brands. So I worked on Suave, Nexus, Dove Men, and Axe. And what I did as a strategic media planner is I was really behind the computer. I was looking at budgets. Let's say, for example, for Dove, their budget $6 million. They needed to spend in TV, digital marketing, print, and all these different type of medias, and we would come together and hear from them on their budget and then create a plan and strategize on what that plan would be. So they would be featured on the cover of People, the back spread of, let's say, for example, Us Weekly. They would have a big TV push, and we would help them put together that campaign. So really great experience. I knew that it was really cool to be working for an agency, seeing how brands evolved and what they did for their marketing. But while I was working for the agency and working in Times Square, something kind of clicked in my brain. And when we were meeting with GQ, which is a big magazine, of course, and we met with them for Axe, they were pitching us. They were pitching us, you need to be on this inside front cover, and here's why. Here are the benefits. And I was sitting there as, a 23-year-old, 22-year-old, and I kind of felt that maybe I should be in some sort of sales role. Being behind the computer every day in this ad agency was a really great experience, but it wasn't necessarily for me. So it kind of clicked that I needed to be in some sort of sales position. And it also clicked that I wanted to be back in Maryland. I wanted to be back in Baltimore. There was something about Baltimore that I loved, and I wanted to be back. So while I was in New York and still working for the ad agency, I did a little research. And ultimately, I ended up working and moving back to Baltimore and working for 105.7 The Fan and the Orioles radio network. So that is actually how originally I met Marco, because I sold quite a lot of sports radio for the Orioles. And so we we were introduced that way. But that was a true sales position. It was commission sales. It was, being in the Baltimore market, going out there, understanding what companies need to do in regards to radio, what their campaigns look like, what their needs are, and the market they're trying to reach. So I was selling sports radio from 2016 when I moved back here, so January of 2016, all the way up to the summer of 2018. And radio was it was a really great career. I went from, being at CBS Radio, and then it was bought out by Entercom Communications. So I went through a company merge. And then I really got to see what it was like to hit the grounds, hit the street, and go out there and sell something that was not easy. Radio is definitely not an easy medium. It's not getting easier, but it was a really great experience being able to be involved with sports, which I love, being able to extend my market and really grow my relationships and market in Baltimore. And then ultimately learn how to sell, understand what it was like to sell, the challenges it took, the really everything it took to overcome sales. But while I was in that position, and I'll kind of get to what I do now, but when I was in that position, doing everything I was doing, just going out there trying to sell 105.7, the Orioles, Ravens game days. I got a message from someone from a company called Van Wagner Sports and Entertainment. They mentioned to me that they are a sports marketing agency that was about to be hired by Loyola University Athletics. So just a little background there. Loyola Athletics, as a Division I athletics department, they put out an RFP, a request for proposal, for a sports marketing agency to handle their athletic sponsorships. They knew as an athletics department, they had, capabilities to run games, game day marketing, game operations, but they never really had someone that spent 100% of their time dedicated to generating revenue for sponsorships, but also working with the athletics department to help them save money and find opportunities for local businesses to engage with our constituency. So our constituency at Loyola are our alums, our staff and faculty, our students, our fans, our families, and our parents. So long story short, Loyola and Van Wagner Sports and Entertainment end up partnering in July of 2018. So Van Wagner is the exclusive multimedia rights holder of Loyola University Athletics. So what that means is they handle the athletics department sponsorship and activation opportunities, and any sort of marketing that falls within athletics to get brands' names out there. So with that all being said, I started in late August, early September of 2018. I sit at Ridley Athletic Complex, the lacrosse field. I work for Van Wagner. So I'm an employee of Van Wagner Sports and Entertainment. I go out there on a daily basis and I try to build relationships with local, regional, national businesses based on who they're looking to reach, the company's needs, and then really what opportunities make sense for Loyola. So that segue is, I'm going to go into some questions you guys had, and you had some great questions. So I'm going to go back and forth from the video to the Word document. So there's a lot of good questions here. So I'm probably going to answer some of the ones that resonated the most with me. And again, I've been in my position, just so you guys know, for about a year and 9 months. So to me, I'm learning. Every day is a learning experience, in my position. And with Van Wagner, and I didn't mention this, but Van Wagner as a company has 38 Division I partners and conferences. So just to give you a frame of reference in some of the schools that we work with, in addition to Loyola being a mid-major Division I school, we work with Stony Brook in New York, St. Joe's in Philly, Georgia State down south. We have Pepperdine across the West Coast, William and Mary in Virginia. And so we focus on partnering at Van Wagner with mid-major Division I schools. So like Loyola. Loyola, great institution, Division I, member of the Patriot League, is not on ESPN every Saturday, which gives us leverage and gives us the chance to tap into the university and work with other areas of the institution. So I didn't mention that before, but that is where we start with athletics. And that's kind of what your questions will be on. But we're able to then tap into the institution and work with the Career Center, work with the Alumni Association, work with our Human Resources Department. And we have a chance to help them generate revenue for their departments as well. So I'm going to go into your questions here. Let's start with number one. What goes into finding a sponsor for Loyola? Does it change by sport, and does it matter the performance of the specific team, or all teams afford the same sponsorships? Really good question. So to answer your first question, what goes into finding a sponsor for Loyola? Well, every single year, Van Wagner, as their consultant and as their partner, we create a business plan. We put together a plan that really highlights the categories within our partnerships that we haven't secured, categories that we've seen success across the collegiate division. So we have targeted categories right now that we're looking to go after for 2021. So when I go back to what goes into finding a sponsor, we need to find someone that's within the targeted category we're looking for. So going into 2021, we really need to secure a partner within automotive, within property and casualty insurance, and then we're also really trying to find a partner within the banking industry. So with that being said, we have to make sure there's first a fit for Loyola based on the partnership we have with the university and with the athletics department. Then we have to go out there and research. We need to look at the market. We need to see who's out there, what these businesses are already partnering with, who they're already sponsoring, and what their goals are, what their objectives are. What are they trying to accomplish? And why would Loyola get them to accomplish that specific marketing or business struggle or goal? So at the end of the day, we always come up with lead lists. We target, we prospect, we go out there and we try to build business relationships. But it depends on what we're looking for as a business with Loyola Athletics, and then it goes into who's the right fit. So we're endlessly prospecting, which means that we're going out there, we're looking at businesses that may be a fit for a partnership, and then we're picking up the phone and we're calling them. We are finding their information, so we're researching beforehand on who we're talking to. We're also vetting them with the institution to make sure that there's nothing. No thing, toes we're stepping on. There's no issues with that. And then we're going out and we're trying to schedule meetings with these partners. Does it change by sport, and does it matter the performance of the sport team? Not necessarily. And that's not what we're trying to tell the businesses, that honestly, it doesn't matter how good the sports team is, because you're basically taking the affinity of a strong athletics department and you're using it to help you build, if it's branding or direct response or whatever it may be. But we also know that when teams are not great, it causes sometimes a decrease in attendance. So whenever there's a decrease in attendance, we see less exposure, and then our partners will say, well, we're reaching less people. So we try to change the narrative to say, no, it does not matter if the team is good or bad, because it's about the experience and the engagement. But if there are less people at games because the team isn't good, it sometimes does affect the amount of people that will be at our games, therefore the exposure for a brand. And then are all teams afforded the same sponsorship? So, at Loyola, out of our 18 Division I sports, we look at lacrosse, basketball, and soccer as kind of our three main sports. Lacrosse, we would say, is our most, and I would say the biggest exposure sport, because on average we're reaching about, let's say, 3,000 people for a men's lacrosse game. So that does reach the most people. But then it comes down to, okay, what does that engagement look like for the partner, and what type of opportunities are they buying into? So if you're a business that buys a permanent sign at Ridley on the windscreen, which you guys see, well, that is very valuable in regards to a digital sign at Reitz Arena. So it's going to really depend on what elements that a business is looking for and what assets they're looking for. But all in all, when we work on these corporate partnerships, it's with the entire athletics department. So they're going to get exposure on the main athletics website, on the social media channels, based on what they're looking for. So it's going to depend and really be a case-by-case situation. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of being a small school in a big city in terms of corporate partnerships? Is it more competitive to gain them than it would be for a school in a rural area such as Bucknell, for example? That's a really good question. Let's see, I'll answer that first. So I think to start off with the disadvantages, and I don't always like to start on a negative, but it's one thing that we're trying to overcome, as we're working through building our partnership platform. So I think what's really hard for us is there is a lot of competition, not just with other institutions in the marketplace. I mean, this is extremely college heavy. So you have Maryland, which is going to be your powerhouse. Then you have Towson, you have Hopkins, you have Loyola, you have Goucher, and then you have, you have a few other ones that fall in between. But then there's competition within professional sports. You have the Orioles, which we love. You have the Ravens. You have, your Baltimore Blast or your non-professional sports. And then not to mention you have a lot of media. You have a lot of local radio stations. You have a lot of local TV stations. You have a lot of digital agencies that are going to be selling you, SEO, SEM online. So that's search engine optimization or search engine marketing. So there's a lot of competition out there. So it tends to be hard. And being in a big city, you really have to figure out what's going to differentiate yourself. What does being a partner with Loyola mean, and why is it different from, let's say, being a partner with the Ravens or being a partner with 105.7 The Fan? What does that look like? And so it's challenging with the competition, but what we try to use is being able to talk about the affinity of your institution, the affinity you have towards your alma mater. Everyone in this room here has some sort of love for Loyola. If it's that they were a student athlete or they just loved one of their professors, you have an affinity towards your brand. So being able to utilize your brand and being able to have partners to utilize the Loyola brand, you have your Loyola Greyhound here, that goes a long way. So there's something to be said about being able to do that and utilizing the rights. And that, I would say, is a little bit more of an advantage. Having your alma mater, taking that affinity and using it to your advantage. Okay, so what makes a successful sponsorship relationship between a brand and a relatively small college like Loyola when there are a lot of other bigger colleges that have a wider reach than us? So that actually is kind of answering what I just did, and it's true. We do have a lot of times we're on meetings and we're talking to businesses, and they say to us, well, why would I sponsor Loyola if Maryland reaches, quadruple the amount of people? And we come back to them and we say, well, why were you interested in learning about Loyola to begin with? We understand that you're trying to reach highly educated, high household income people over age 55. Well, that's a lot of what the Loyola audience looks like. So we would kind of throw it back to them to say, well, why were you interested in taking this meeting? The other thing is what making a successful sponsorship between the brand and a small college is, again, having a true partnership, understanding what their needs are, and then always asking them. What I've learned, this is a huge thing that I've learned, is what defines success to them. So what are they going to see as success with this partnership? So if it's a bank, is it bringing in 20 new checking accounts? Is it just getting brand loyalty? We need to understand what defines success, because that's going to make our partnership successful. If we don't have any sort of mechanism to measure what the partner thinks is going to be successful, well, when we come to the end of our partnership and they didn't see, 20 people in the door, we never defined what that success would be, well, they're not going to be happy. So to really create a successful partnership, we need to truly understand one another's needs and goals, but also what's going to define success to them. That's going to be huge when we're defining these partnerships. Let's see, I'm going to go through some others here. Okay, so this is a good one. So returning to your alma mater in 2018, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen within the athletics department compared to when you attended Loyola and competed in swimming and diving? So ironically, I did dive at a few meets, which was kind of fun. I did that maybe 2 times, but as mentioned, I was a swimmer. So what's different is that when I was swimming there, I woke up whenever, 5:30, swam from 6 to 7:30, lifted, left, went to class, swam again. So I never realized how important partnerships are for athletics departments, how much revenue that could bring to an athletics department, and it could really change the narrative within athletics. I also didn't understand or really know how much goes into athletics departments, how everyone's roles are different. I was swimming. I was kind of just going to practice, class, competition. I never realized how much goes into an athletics department, um, and how many roles go into really making things successful. And it's eye opening. There's about 65 people in the Loyola athletics department, and it's eye opening how well everyone works together as a team. And there's a lot that goes into athletics departments. Just getting competition. I mean, I didn't realize how much goes into travel, booking trips, you know, buses. It's crazy. So that's one thing that's been different, seeing it on the inside rather than the outside. Let's see here. So that's going kind of answering deeper into that question. How was the transition from being a student athlete to the general manager position at the school in which you attended? So we're still, we're working through some of the problems that we're having, and they're not major problems, but I think me being a student athlete, there are some times when they're like, swimmer Sam, she was a swimmer here. So just being able to really come out there as a professional, knowing what I'm doing, showing the success that we can have. It just, that's a big challenge, being a student athlete, and again, being known as a student athlete, and now being in the professional world here. Just again, changing who I am, what I do, and trying to build my success. I have been successful since I've been there, and so I hope that with Loyola Athletics and Van Wagner, we can really continue that success. Let's see. Let's see. All right, this is an awesome one. So number 9, with Loyola's low game attendance, do you feel that it's hard for sponsors to meet their goals and objectives? Really great question. It depends on what their goals and objectives are. So if someone in a local business, regional, national, whoever they are, their goals were to gain brand awareness, but also be able to reach, a certain amount of people. Well, there's a lot of times we can't deliver on that, because of our low game attendance. Loyola Athletics, as an athletics department, is investing in our game operations. We're investing in, what it's going to take to generate more attendance at games. What does that look like? What does the data look like? We're also trying to figure out, okay, do sponsors positively impact game attendance? I think yes. I think if we have really exciting and great giveaways, well, it may be able to bring more people there. If we have a strong, if we have really strong teams, that also helps bring people there. So it definitely does affect sponsors that we need to reach a lot of people, and that's part of their goals and objectives. It affects it. And so we're trying to change a lot of the times that these partnerships are not always about reach, but more so about engagement, or more so about, brand loyalty. So we really just have to redefine the objectives for the partner if they're looking for the most amount of reach, because that's not always what we deliver. Okay. Do you predict Loyola Maryland sponsorship fees increasing in the future, considering how different the Loyola Maryland sponsorship fees were about 7 to 10 years ago? Absolutely. So when Van Wagner came into our position, our first year was in 18-19 for the school year, and we had to look at our current partnerships and really understand what those deals look like, how much the partner was spending, and really what their return was looking like as well. When we first looked at it, there were a lot of partners that have been with us for 10 plus years before Loyola hired a sports marketing agency. So they were getting a lot of exposure for a very small amount of money. So our first year in 18-19 was to bring these partners in and just renew them flat, because we were a third party company, and we had to be sensitive towards that. We had to be sensitive towards Loyola athletic partners, knowing that they've worked with one guy or a department for so long, and now a third party company is coming in, and we're trying to help, but it doesn't always look like that in the beginning. So we had to renew everything flat. Now in 1920, my goal and my job was to generate over $125,000 of new revenue. But then we also had to be able to increase our current partners, and get them to spend more than they were originally. So those were the renewals that I mentioned we renewed flat. Didn't always work, was hard. We wanted to, some people were upset by us asking for more money. So this year we did increase some, we didn't increase all, but every single year we're having we're first finding more inventory. So we're finding more inventory that provides partners with more exposure. So we're really trying to find that. And then also we're getting more interest. So we're having businesses that have interest in our partnerships. So that means that they're taking some of the inventory we have, and therefore we have less inventory. So we have to raise the price of our partnerships. So yes, you'll see, I would say maybe in 2-3 years, we'll have even a larger increase in our prices of our sponsorships and partnerships, just because we have more interest. Inventory is going to get tighter and more valuable. It's a great question. Let's see. Okay. What sponsorship or partnership deal for Loyola was the hardest to close? So I think the hardest ones to close, and the one we're working on right now, is absolutely within healthcare. And the reason some of those deals are hardest to close is because they're multi-year deals, they're 10-year deals. So when deals are longer, and there's more money associated with them, within 6-figure deals a year, it's going to be harder to close those deals because they're bigger and they're longer term. But we always want to work towards, in these type of roles and what we do, we want to work towards multi-year deals. We want to work towards 6-figure deals, because it is absolutely great to have 12 restaurants that are partners, so that when a family's coming to town and they need a place to go to dinner with their daughter or son after a game or whatever it may be, or a Division I team needs to eat, well, we can send them to our restaurant partners. Those are really great in that regard, but they don't always have the most money to invest. So we have to look towards bigger deals and more longer term deals, which we know is going to be harder for us to close, but they're going to be more beneficial in the end. What we found, and if anyone is looking into getting into sponsorships, sales, media, the smallest deals are the hardest to handle. They're the hardest legwork. There's just the most legwork. They're the hardest to get responses from, because they may not only own the business, but they may be doing everything to payroll, to running the shop, to cooking. You never know what they do. So they're the hardest to deal with. So you always want to look towards, well, what's going to be the best partner for Loyola based on the amount of work that's going to go into it for Van Wagner, for Loyola, and then in regards to the partner, is this going to be the most success with them as well? So see. All right, so what are some of the more well-known sponsors we work with? So depends what you guys would consider well-known, but I'll name a few that are local and you may have heard of. So Advanced Radiology is a partner that we work with. So when someone gets injured and they need imaging services for an x-ray and whatnot, well, they'll go to Advanced Radiology. I believe they may be a partner with the Orioles as well. I'm trying to think of some other ones we work with. Of course, you guys are familiar with Chick-fil-A. You're familiar with Smoothie King. You may be familiar with Home Slice, Johnny's. Those are local restaurants that you guys may be familiar with from, going to Loyola and seeing them. Choice One Urgent Care is another urgent care center that we work with. MedStar Sports Medicine is our sports medicine provider for athletics. Trying to think of some other major companies. Let's see. You can even go to the Loyola Greyhounds website. And if you go to loyolagreyhounds.com, you can go to corporate partners. There's a section inside athletics. I'm just going to throw out a few more. ABC Party and Tent Rental. Let's see, some other well-known ones. Mid-Atlantic Muffler and Brake right off of York Road. We have the Social North Charles, which is an apartment complex, which maybe some of you guys live at. So as you heard from those, a lot of restaurant partners, sports medicine, urgent cares are key for any sort of athletic partnership. And we have, apartment complexes as well. Again, they're trying to reach students, so their campaign is just about directing students there and coming up with marketing that's going to hit the student body. All right, so let's see. Okay, this is a really good one, and there's a few more here, and I'll answer the 16, 17, and 18, because those are real-time questions that I can easily answer. So what is the main reason you've heard or challenge you face as to why an organization might turn down a sponsorship deal from Loyola? So we come across a lot of objections. We also try to do our best to be able to answer objections each time and be able to overcome those objections with a solution. And so with that being said, some of the things we hear all the time is it's too expensive. And actually, I'm going to grab something because then I can even answer more. So, sorry, I'm back. All right, so one of the ones too expensive for what their return is what they're gonna receive with the return. It's actually an okay response, depending on what the price was and what we offered them. Sometimes we do put together deals that are, $50,000, $75,000, and a sponsor may not be able to see with that deal if they're going to get return. So they could ask us as a response, well, what's our return on our investment here? And our response back is, well, it's really hard to be able to understand what your return is going to be. So I'm going to ask you, well, what's going to define success with this partnership? You're a bank. Is it about bringing in, 4 checking accounts or converting a savings account to an investment account? I mean, what are those levels of success for you? So we're going to throw it back to them to understand what their success is. Now, some of the other ones we wrote down that we hear all the time is we don't target college students, so that's why they don't want to be a sponsor. Well, that's a very common misunderstanding of our platform, because yes, students are a portion of our audience, but it's only a portion. And I mentioned this earlier in the video that our audience is going to be the students, of course, that's going to be a portion. It's going to be the staff and faculty, the alumni, the families, and I'm trying to think, the fans, of course, and then our other corporate partners. So if there are businesses that want to reach more businesses, well, we can introduce you to 48 local businesses that we work with our partnerships. So that's an area as well. And then some of the other challenges why organizations may turn down a sponsorship is it may not be in their budget. There are a lot of times that we want to start, of course, speaking with the decision maker to understand from them, okay, what are their goals? What are their objectives? What are their needs? But a lot of times the decision maker pushes us to the marketing person, and the marketing person may not know exactly what they can spend or does not know exactly the number. So we'll put together a proposal for them. It'll go in their hands and it will go to the decision maker and they'll say, we don't have it in our budget. So that's something that we come across all the time. And then I think, at the end of the day, it's just not part of their marketing plan. There was a call we had last week with a business that really needed to reach families. And we felt that with what we presented to them and our plan, our marketing platform and all the assets we put together, we felt that it would deliver and reach families. It created a family fun zone. They were presenting sponsor a family weekend. There were certain assets we put together, but they came back and said, well, it doesn't fit, our goals, our objectives, and we don't think it's really going to reach families. And so we asked them, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? What do you mean it doesn't reach families? We have to ask them some hard probing questions, because we need to get to the answer of what's the real reason they're not being a sponsor of Loyola. So every single day, every single week, we have more things that we learn, that we try to overcome. So that's kind of something that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and trying to overcome people's objections. So how impactful has the Chick-fil-A sponsorship been for Loyola? More specifically, has its increased fan attendance and Okay, so guys, this is a great question. So this is the Chick-fil-A question. So how impactful has the Chick-fil-A sponsorship been for Loyola? And then even more specifically, has it increased fan attendance and fan enthusiasm at games? So we changed, and Chick-fil-A actually changed what they did with their sponsorship this year. So when we met with them to determine what they were interested in, they told us that they needed to reach students. They felt like their partnership in 1819 for that school year at Reitz Arena just wasn't reaching as many students as they were looking for. So we tailored and we kind of changed what they did this year. So they were a sponsor of our student section. They sold their Chick-fil-A sandwiches at some games. And then they do some, some in-game videos, which you guys have seen. I think it has been impactful. When we renewed this deal the first year for 18-19, there were some concerns that we didn't see the best return. We feel like we didn't get the most amount of people buying our product at basketball. So I think we're trying to actually make it more successful year after year. I don't know if we've seen the most success on both ends. Have they been the happiest? We're still trying to determine what makes them happy, and what I think and what I'm understanding is selling their sandwiches, making money is going to make them happy. So what does that look like? And then is Loyola happy with it? And that's something that we're trying to determine. I think in regards to increased fan attendance and fan enthusiasm, well, everyone likes Chick-fil-A unless you're a vegetarian, and maybe you don't like it. That's okay. I like Chick-fil-A. Some people don't. But it doesn't necessarily create and change the game experience. Besides the fact that you're getting a product that you like, and that's a positive experience, I don't think we've necessarily tapped into how it's going to change the whole experience of a game. We don't do much in-game exposure with them, in-game promotions. I think we could probably increase that. I think the food's great, but I don't think it's really like made a humongous difference in attendance or enthusiasm. But I'm going to ask you and turn this at the end if you think it has, because I have a few quiz questions at the end, so I'm going to add that to it. Okay, and last questions, guys. This goes and still on the subject of Chick-fil-A. Regarding Loyola's sponsorship with Chick-fil-A, I was wondering if instead of selling a small portion of their menu at lacrosse games, if you and your team have ever considered opening a pop-up shop at Ridley? Yes. So that's a great question, and we have. So actually, in the spring of 2019, they ended up, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they ended up taking out Chick-fil-A at concessions fully, and they started selling their own concessions, so Loyola concessions, just popcorn, nachos, pretzels. They have a burger, I believe, maybe a hot dog. And then they had a side area where Chick-fil-A was selling their sandwiches, kind of more as a pop-up. So that actually started in the spring of 2019. And then, of course, we got to spring of 2020, and we only had about 3 lacrosse games, so we didn't necessarily get to really see that. But yes, we're actually going to be having more Chick-fil-A pop-up locations. We found that to be a little bit more effective. And we also found that as we talked about, we all love Chick-fil-A, but I think our fan base needed a few options, which is why we changed up the concessions so that we had a few other options for families and fans that ended up coming to our games. So I think you'll see as we enter into the 2021 year that rather than Chick-fil-A taking over full concessions, we will be doing more pop-up shops / locations. And what we'll also be doing is inviting potential corporate partners that are spending money to be partners with us to sell their products at some of our games at Ridley. So potentially for a big soccer game, big lacrosse game, we may have our partner Home Slice Pizza selling their product. But I'm actually going to segue into questions. I've 3 questions, and this, again, I don't know how we're going to answer these, but I'm sure Marco will figure it out. So question number 1, and this is on the same conversation we're having about concessions at Ridley. Is there anything that you guys would, besides potentially if you're over 21, Bud Light, is there anything that you guys would like at Ridley Athletic Complex for concessions? What would make your game experience better? So that's number 1, food, entertainment, anything. What would make your game experience better at Ridley, but also at Reitz? I mean, let's put it in the same conversation. What would be a good experience for you at both? What would make your experience better? Question number 2 is, what are your thoughts on Chick-fil-A? There's 2 Chick-fil-A oriented questions. And so for the student that asked, or the students that did ask this, I mean, do you like the Chick-fil-A partnership? What would you change about it? We're still building that and trying to figure out what the best way to work with Chick-fil-A is going to be. So hearing from you on what does that look like for you guys as students? Would like to hear from you on that. And then finally, my last question for you, my quiz question number 3 is, do you guys know of any businesses locally, regionally, or nationally that you think would be a good fit for a partnership with Loyola? So you guys are students, you know what it's like to go to school at Loyola, you know what type of activities you get into. What type of partner would you see being a really good fit for Loyola and Loyola Athletics? So I'll leave that to you. I am going to share this video on Marco's YouTube channel. I'm also going to ask Marco to share my contact information. So if you guys do want to reach out, if you have questions, comments, whatever, you can reach out to me. We can schedule time on the phone. Whatever you want to do, I'm willing to help you guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.